Good evening. I would love to call the Addison Central School District ACSD Board meeting to order. The time is now 6:30. We seem to have an echo.
Oh, good.
Sorry, it was a little distracting. I would like to start with introductions, and we'll start with Jason, please.
Jason Chance. Steve Cash.
Mary Heather Noble.
Trisha Allen.
Laura Hartman.
Wendy Baker.
Suzanne Buck. Online.
Ron Mackliffe, and Jamie McCallum is waiting as a panelist, to become a panelist.
Oh, okay.
I also see Nava.
Thank you, Ron. David McCallum.
And Nava, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Nava, and I'm the student representative.
Thank you, Nava. And our administration in the room, please.
Sonia Afine, Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Restorative Practices.
Courtney Cron, Director of Teaching and Learning.
Natalie Palazzo, Assistant Superintendent of Specialized Services.
Matt Carenti, Director of Finance and Operations.
Caitlin Steele, Principal of the High School.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda? Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Steve, would you like to introduce yourself?
Steve Orzek, Middlebury.
Thank you. And so we now have our first public comment period, and I remind people that the public comment is a time where the board hears what our public would like to let us know, what they're thinking, what their questions are, but it is not a time for the board to have a back and forth, nor is it a time that the board would hear any personnel issues. And it's limited to 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone in the room for public that would like to make a comment? Raise your hand if you, Abby.
I just want to make it known that the Shoreham principal was very flexible after the Shoreham parents made her aware of the conflict of the meeting in Bridport open house and the Shoreham math night. And so now the Shoreham math night is on March 3rd, and we will be able to go to the Bridport meeting and open house, which is what we would like to do based on our kids being in that school next year.
Yeah. So. Thank you. Is there anyone online that would like to make a public comment? I don't see any hands raised. Okay. We will move on then. May I have a recommendation to approve the minutes of January 26th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved. Oops, is there any discussion on the minutes? Online? Nope. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of January 26th. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed.
We also have Ellen.
Oh, Ellen, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everybody. Ellen Whelan-Weist.
Thank you. Next is approval of the ACSD bills.
So we can do the bills approval that we didn't do last time because of the snowstorm and the short time frame there. So there are 3 warrants to approve. The general fund warrant dated January 23rd for $564,649.62. The general fund warrant dated January 21st for $403,466.30. And 1 payroll warrant dated January 23rd for $1,075,319.44. Yes, Susanna had several questions that were answered over the course of the week. So I move that we approve the bills as read.
May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion about the bills? Seeing no hands on Whoops. Is that a hand? No? Okay. Oh, it's your cursor hand. Okay. Seeing there's no discussion, we'll move to approve the bills. All those in favor of approving the bills as read by Jason, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Report of the superintendent, Dr. Baker.
No, Stuart.
Oh, sorry. Nava, I am so sorry. It's your turn to shine.
Perfect. Okay. So hi everyone. Sorry, I'm on Zoom tonight because I have another Zoom call, very exciting, to get on at 7:30. So as for the report of the student representatives, me and Taryn have continued to work on our project where we go to the different schools and talk to different students. So most recently we went to Shoreham and we met with 4th graders and 5th graders, and it was really interesting to hear from them because they have been experiencing, because their school is so small, the 4th and 5th grade classrooms are combined. So it was really interesting to hear about the students' experience in that, and then we heard about their kind of thoughts and just how they were feeling about having to go to Bridport next year. And me and Taryn haven't had as time to like sit down and fully go through the notes, so I don't kind of want to like speak just based off my memory right now, but I will say it was really interesting. There's definitely a lot of anxiety from the students and just a sense of like sadness because they feel like they're being thrown out of, you know, the place in the school that they grew up going to. And then there's a lot of nervousness, about just being in a new environment, but there was definitely an understanding that the situation that they were in right now, that they are in right now, doesn't work the best. Like with 4th graders and 5th graders being in the same classroom, they talked a lot about arguments and struggles with just students being on different levels and having only one teacher being available to help with that. So that was kind of what we did there. And then at the high school right now, we are 2 weeks away from February break, and we have a lot of really exciting things for high school students coming up. So we have our winter dance this Friday, and then we go into our February break. It's called Winter Carnival. So we're gonna have a talent show, and we have, this year we're having a student volleyball game instead of a student basketball game in the past. So different things like that, you know, it can seem like just like a fun thing that's happening at the school, but I think it's a really good example of like community building and different ways that like, it's a great time for like, especially freshmen who it's their first year here, like to really get a glimpse of like what more high school can offer. Coming from the middle school where things are just like different rules. So yeah, it's a really great just time for the community to come together, and we have a lot of school spirit during that time, a lot of games and stuff, and that is kind of what is coming up soon. Yeah.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for Nava? Anybody online for questions or? Nope. Okay. Thank you very much, Nava. Good luck with your 7:30 phone call. All right, now we'll go to the report of the superintendent.
Okay, we have 2 personnel appointments that are there before you. They are ready for your approval.
May I have a motion about the personnel appointments?
I move that we appoint Annette Franklin, Senior Play Musical Director, and Scott McDougall as a paraprofessional 1.0 FTE Step 1 on 2/9.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion or? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. It has been moved and seconded to approve the personnel appointments of Annette Franklin, Senior Play Music Director, and Scott McDougall, Paraprofessional 1.0, Step 1. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions?
Yep.
Sorry, I forgot the nays, but. All right, motion's passed. Board action, is this going to be you or?
So the next thing on the
Suzanne?
superintendent's report. Oh,
I'm sorry. I actually wonder if, and I know this is off agenda, but we move on so quickly, and I was processing some of what Nava was saying, and I do actually have a question that I'd love to ask her that came to me as we were moving along. Can I ask that question of Nava? Great. Nava, it has been so lovely to hear your reflections and the information you both have been bringing to us from these schools that are and these communities of students that are going through really big transitions. And I appreciate that you guys haven't fully digested the notes from the Bridport Shoreham visits yet, and probably maybe even had like a more global conversation between the two of you about all of the conversations between Ripton Salisbury, Bridport Shoreham. It would be lovely if, and not to add to your plate, but I mean, any recommendations or ideas that you both have for us to consider as a board as the transition, particularly for Bridport Shoreham, is coming up, based on your direct conversations with students, not imminently, but just as you're thinking about the next few weeks, I would really welcome that. If you're swamped, I get it, but I have found a lot of value in how you have brought this information to us, and would welcome your thinking from a student's perspective about ways that those kids can be supported through big changes.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So what we have been doing is since we already went through the notes from our last meeting, not just this one, not the Shoreham one, but the meeting before that. And what we've been doing is we've been kind of adding to a master slideshow as we go, and that's what we plan on doing throughout the rest of the year. And so if it's helpful, we can bring up the specific slideshow and show you the one from Shoreham, and our next school will probably be Bridport. And so once we do those, we can have a slideshow just for those two schools, since more decision making is coming. But we also do plan on having that kind of one massive presentation at the end, so that we can look at overall trends and like what's happening, and make kind of an overarching like how to improve student experience across the district. But I do think a specific school recommendation would be helpful. So thank you. Yeah, and we can incorporate that into our report next time or in the next 2 weeks.
Thank you. That would be great. Really appreciate it.
Okay, move on? Yep. Okay, so we have a board action relative to an ed reserve transfer for your consideration. It's probably best considered page 8 of your packet, and Matt's going to lead you through it.
So this request that we have for you today comes at the advice of our auditors. This is part of the work that we have been doing with them to clean up the books after FY25 as they prepare our audit statement for us from last year. What we're looking at is the need to bring 3 accounts onto the books that hadn't previously been on the books. So in FY25, we were running 2 ACP programs for alternative special education, which were originally set up as part of a pre-district collaborative. The way that collaboratives get accounted for is that you have to create a separate set of accounts because you have 3 different entities that are all contributing a portion of the total costs, and so it can't exist in anyone's general fund. So that was the purpose of setting those shared accounts up. Due to changes in the structure of cost sharing for those programs, in 25 we shifted to a tuition-based model where we were absorbing all of the expenses and accepting revenue from sending districts in the form of tuition. That was a departure from the initial cost sharing third structure, and led to revenue shortfalls in both of those programs as we sunset them and worked on incorporating them into the FY26 plan, which is where they are today, back in loans and MUHS. The third account that we were working with was the A208 program, which continues to operate out of 208. That in its first year was also set up to receive tuition students, and there has been ongoing conversation about allowing that to continue. But again, as all of this was happening, our audit team recommended just moving that back into the general fund, because it will never be operated as a 3-district collaborative. So bringing all of those into the books was a hit to the bottom line that created just over $1 million of basis change. While we were figuring all that out, we took a $1.27 million and designated that to the capital reserve account. This was the leftover fund balance, general fund balance from FY24. So we said, all right, 24 had 1.27 million left over. We're going to continue the trend of pushing these into capital reserves as we save up for the imminent need to address deferred maintenance in our facilities. And with it safely parked in capital reserves, we're not able to access it for evening out the basis for FY26 as a result of these other accounts. So long story short, we're looking to use Ed Reserve in that capacity. We're currently holding a balance of just over 2.3 million in our education reserves. These accounts are different from capital reserves in the sense that they do not have a timeline on when you can spend them. They don't formally require board approval for their use. They're a restricted revenue, not a true sort of voter designated or board designated reserve. However, we're coming here tonight to ask to use these funds. The purpose is, as I said before, to bring our starting line to 0 for FY26. And we hope that by doing that, we will generate a positive outcome at the end of this year that could then, if there is one, get pushed back towards replenishment at a later date.
Could I have a motion and then we'll discuss?
I'll make a motion and then we can discuss. So I'll make a motion that the board approved a transfer of $1,098,696 from education reserves to the general fund to restore a 0 basis position for the FY26 general fund.
Second. Now, does anybody have any questions for Matt or anybody else that may have deep knowledge of the subject? Don't all speak at once. Online, anybody? Steve?
So, I mean, I understand the in-depth explanation, but basically, money went into the capital reserve. It created a drawdown of the reserves, of the education reserves, and you're asking to replenish that? Is that essentially?
So 24's general fund balance went into the reserves prior to knowing 25's shortfall. So we were, and that's a voter designated move.
Right.
So rather than being able to use undesignated FY24 funds to cover FY25, those are already in capital reserves, so they're not accessible for this maneuver. We only have Ed reserves accessible. Otherwise, we would need to put it out to the voters to move money back out of capital reserves and towards Ed reserves. So there's almost a little fungibility in that, right? You know.
Jason?
I'll just add that had we had visibility to this, we probably would not have made the recommendation to move everything into capital reserves, and we would not be here.
Correct.
But we are here. So.
Any other questions, concerns, comments? If not, we'll proceed to vote on the motion, and the motion reads that the board approve a transfer of $1,098,696 from the education reserves to the general fund to restore a zero basis position for the FY26 general fund. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed.
Okay.
I almost, in order to just go math humor here, we're less than $1 away from the reserve ending balance being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Which is an easy one to remember. Right?
Did you want to put $1 in or take $1 out?
Stick to the zero basis.
Thank you. Next thing in the superintendent's report is a presentation from Dr. Afeline, who, as you know, just joined us as the Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Restorative Practice. And as her position is really centrally located within the strategic plan, many of the rest of the district office folks are required by law. Sonia is part of the strategic plan, and her position was manifested through the work and the goals that were envisioned in that work. And so her presentation is entitled The Strategic Plan sort of Progress update, but she's also going to be sharing with you the things that she's been able to learn about and focus on as she's joined us. It might be helpful if it's if we do the questions at the end. Would that work for you, Sonia?
Yeah, that would be.
All right. So if that's okay, you have a copy of her slides as they were Friday. There are a couple of updated numbers in there that she'll show you, but that way we can return to them as we go. So, Dr. Afeline.
Thank you for the introduction.
Dr.
Courtney's going to
Afeline
steer for me.
has some technical support here. It's slowing her down.
Technical support didn't get supper.
Oh.
So you, that's the camera if you want to use that one. I think it will present bigger. So yes, thank you. There we go. Dr. Sonia Afeline, Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Restorative Practices. You all know me because you've been seeing me, but you probably don't know a lot about what I've been doing since I've been here in the last 7 months, I believe. And so hopefully this presentation will give you some clarity on that work and give you a little bit of insight into some of the progress that we've made at present and where we're going ideally in the future. And so, as Wendy said, I know my position is directly linked to the strategic plan. And so I'm honored that you all have entrusted me with such a big responsibility. And I appreciate the opportunity to serve ACSD. And so everything that I talk about in this presentation will link back to the strategic plan. I'll connect all of the work that I do to that as we go forward. I'll cover 5 areas, which will include attendance, student incidences, and the Panorama SEL survey, and HHB, as well as my equity and restorative practices work. And so, with that, I think it's best to start off by letting you know the teams that I support and individuals. So they're all listed here. The Universal Pre-K Coordinator, Education Programs Coordinator, and then I also support the Student Response Coordinators who have been doing work with me on restorative practices, and counselors, social workers, nurses, and behavior consultants and specialists. I've also had an opportunity to collaborate with several other teams and individuals, building principals and APs I meet with regularly. I've had an opportunity to serve the preschool team, librarians, interventionists, and curriculum coordinators. I've had an opportunity to collaborate with them. I don't directly support them, but I've had time to meet with them, which has been great. And then I've also met with the high school BIPOC affinity group. And on the calendar, I will be joining the Student Coalition on Human Rights at the high school. And so in the state, I've joined some various organizations that are equity focused, and I've had an opportunity to be a part of the Addison County Chronic Absenteeism Committee, which has done some work around attendance that I'll talk about, and I'll be meeting with the Culturally Responsive Classroom Committee at MUMS, and I've had an opportunity to be a part of the Religious Pluralism and Diverse Cultures Working Group at high school. All right, so starting with attendance. So why attendance? So attendance is directly related to our strategic plan, belonging, access, and success. And so when I arrived, I immediately started working with the Addison County Chronic Absenteeism Committee on getting our district and the other districts in Addison County aligned, and also in alignment with the state on how we are looking at unexcused absences. Sometimes truancy and chronic absenteeism are talked about as one. Sometimes people conflate the two, but they're actually very different. Chronic absenteeism is looking at both excused and unexcused absences. And so with that, we were able to develop our ACSD unexcused absence protocol, and I'm currently working with the attendance committee, the ACSD attendance committee, on getting our attendance system more cohesive and where we're following the same processes, and that is going well. But I just want to point out that this is all baseline data, and this year is focused on collection of data. And so what I'll present is not 100% reliable because we're still building out those systems. However, we do track attendance. We track daily attendance, and we have all of that data, but it's just kind of getting all of our schools on the same page with how they collect it. And in a way where everyone can see it and it's shared. Next slide. So on this slide, you will see some of our data from the last 5 years, and then that's up at the top on the left, and then bottom left is over 2 years, so year over year data. And then on the right, you'll see it says 7.97% of students are chronically absent this school year, which is down from 1.7% this time last year. That number is not 100% accurate because it changes daily. But when I put this presentation together last week, that number was accurate. And I'd like to point out that for the state of Vermont, the chronic absenteeism rate is around 25%, roughly. So we're pretty low comparatively.
I know we're supposed to hold questions, but can you define chronically absent for me?
Yes, it is unexcused and excused absences. So any absence for any reason.
How many absences until you're chronically absent?
Yeah.
10%, so if 10% of missed school days, then you're considered chronically absent. And so my upcoming work that we're moving into as we head into spring and summer is working on a universal school-wide chronic absenteeism prevention kind of a toolkit. And so I'm working on that with our ACSD attendance committee as well as the Addison County Chronic Absenteeism Committee. So we're all looking at it together and just working on those improved processes that I had mentioned before. So that's what's upcoming. And so thinking about behavior and SEL and the why behind that. Can you pop back to actually, don't worry about it. We'll just keep going. But I will mention for attendance that connected, part of the why, and I didn't say this before, around attendance is we know that when students feel like they belong, they're more likely to want to be in school and show up. And so when we're thinking about tardies and curbing skipping behavior, those are things that really matter. And then also, as we're thinking about access, students who are regularly in school are more likely to reach their full academic potential and graduate. When they are not in school, they're missing out on those things. And then also we want to make sure that we're being equitable and we're ensuring that students are having an opportunity to be at school, and thinking about how that connects to behavior and SEL. This is what reminded me. We want to look at the whole child. So as we're thinking about the whole child, behavior and SEL, it is belonging, it's access, it's probably actually success too, but those were the targets specifically that were related to my work. We want to make sure that students feel like they are supported, and we're looking at their mental health and all things that will support them in thriving in their academics and social experiences while they're in school. And so the work that I've done at the moment is our HHB and Title IX forms, and our folders need a little bit of cleanup. I'm trying to streamline the process to make it easier for the SRCs and behavior folks who have to fill out those forms to try to get rid of some redundancies. We have done some work on our Panorama SEL survey. So that is in the works. It's not different than last year, but what we did was make sure that it's accessible to students so that they're able to understand the questions. And then our SRCs are all certified restorative practitioners now. And they did that through the IARP. So they are equipped to begin, as we go forward, training our leaders and staff in restorative practices. And I'm also working on just helping our district have a solid way that we are tracking our incidences. So those are things that are underway. Next slide, thank you. And so on the left, I have data that shows our majors and our minors. And so you may have not seen this before, but majors are those incidences that are state reportable, and they are usually like a little more serious in nature, and they have more serious consequences. And the minors are on the right, and those are usually handled at the building level, and they are not reported to the state. Those are not state reportable. On the right top, you'll see our monthly behavior and SEL data, so that's just showing trends and behaviors by month. And then on the bottom right, that's by week. And this image here shows our panorama survey data. So I have it for secondary on the left, elementary on the right. That top row in white shows our district's average. Each of the rows below represent our schools. And the dark orange, light orange are those that are below the average. The light blue and dark blue are those that are above. And that center gray area is what is about 2% within the average. Oh, also the areas that we look at, those 5 areas, which are now 7, because Panorama did some updating, but those, for the fall, it was emotional, I can't read them, but they're up there: emotional regulation, growth mindset, self-efficacy, and social awareness, and self-management. Even with my glasses, that's pretty small. And so those are the areas that are covered. I don't have data for the younger students, so that's elementary 3 through 5. The younger students, they don't take the tests in the same way. It's their teacher perceptions of their behavior and social emotional development. This slide shows our panorama data year over year. So again, secondary on the left, elementary on the right. And you can see the areas that we increased. So for secondary, it was social awareness. And on the right for elementary, there's the highest was also social awareness. Or no, I'm sorry, secondary was self-management was the highest, but it did increase in social awareness as well.
And sorry, just real quick, over
Yes.
time, what's the time period that you're?
So that's last year compared to this year. So that's the increase this year, or the decrease, if there is a decrease, from the previous school year. And this is our HHB data, current as of last week when I pulled it. We had a total of 41 investigations, of which 14 were substantiated. All right, so the upcoming work for behavior and SEL is again that streamlining of the HHB folders, forms, and all the things that our SRCs have to work with, and building administrators and other behavior support when they are involved in that process. And then just working on building capacity throughout the district on restorative practices. The SRCs have done an amazing job. They've exceeded my expectations. My goal for them this year was just to get trained and understand restorative practices inside and out, and they have gone above and beyond that and have already started doing work in the building. So, and then just getting an alignment on how we are tracking the data that we have and collecting it. I remember all of this is baseline data. None of the data that you've seen is absolutely 100% reliable because we don't have processes in place where we're all tracking everything in the same way. So that's what I'm working on. And then my equity and restorative practices work are kind of connected, bundled together in this. And they touch all areas of the strategic plan. So belonging, access, and success are all touched by that work. We have a new district equity leadership working group that is taking a look at some of our equity work in the district. We're beginning to work on a staff training potentially that looks at implicit bias, culturally responsive teaching and leading, and identity. It starts with identity, implicit bias and culturally responsive teaching and leading, and then I've had an opportunity to lead some restorative circles in the district with both staff and students, which has been nice. I was with the Bridport Shoreham staff leading a circle, and I've done some with our preschool teams, and I've had an opportunity to do some circles and support with students at the middle school. I've also had an opportunity to work with the librarians. We've been discussing all the books and digital resources that are available to students and ensuring that they are culturally responsive and that they have diverse characters and authors. And that's going well. And then also just seeing what they need. And then I've had an opportunity to also collaborate with the curriculum team. And I've talked to some of our interventionists, just discussing the educational quality standards, and as we begin thinking about how our MTSS framework looks in ACSD. So I've been working on that, and we've made good progress with Dr. Baker, Dr. Colazzo, and Courtney Cron. We call ourselves Team SOC because I'm Sonia Afla and Courtney Team SOC. And yeah, we've made good progress there. And so thinking about equity, it connects to belonging, access, and success in a number of ways, because when students have an opportunity to feel like they are a part of the community, they're more likely to want to be a part of the school and succeed. And then thinking about access and how we are ensuring that students are able to have classrooms and buildings that support them and their education, and then their success ultimately is connected to all of those things. Next slide. And so thinking about my upcoming work. So we've been thinking about metrics that can support equitable and inclusive classroom spaces. I've got plans to begin connecting with our HR team to look at some tools that can start gathering data on our staff and their experiences as they are starting off the year. It'll be ideally done a couple times a year, but that's in development stages, and thinking about how we expand our restorative practices work in a non-hierarchical way, and allowing everyone an opportunity to be involved in that work, and just expanding on it. And then also expanding our affinity groups. We have the one at the high school, and we are hoping to also have an affinity group at the middle school. So that concludes my presentation, and I guess we can open it up to questions.
Jason.
I have a question.
Yes.
Could we jump back to the panorama slide with the heat maps?
Yes.
I'm hoping I'm sorry if I missed it. The horizontal rows, what do they represent in each of these?
So the horizontal rows, these are our schools. So this is our schools. We don't have the names.
Okay.
And they're not in any particular order.
Okay. So 2 secondary schools and 6 elementary schools.
And then one, middle school, high school.
My other question was the major and minor incidents. You had 500 major incidents and 2,500 minor incidents. It seems like a lot for a district of our size. What's your assessment of that?
Well, I think as we're collecting the data and knowing that this is baseline data and we don't have a solid definitive process that we're using, I think it may be that some schools, one, they might actually have an uptick in behaviors, but also that they're collecting their data or their criteria might be different. And so that's what we're working on, making sure, hopefully when I report next time, I can confidently say, like, here was our previous data and now we are a little more organized in how we're tracking student incidences.
I don't think there has previously been any calibration about that. So, and that language was introduced in the state in probably 2010, maybe. So you know, it needs to have our arms wrapped around it. Sonia actually has just gotten all of the schools to be reporting their data in an online form, so that way it can even be seen. So she's right in saying this is kind of a baseline of where we are and what that looks like. Steve?
Just staying on this topic, but the 500 major incidents, if that's reportable to the state, aren't there state criteria that say this is a reportable incident, and isn't that kind of the bar?
There is, however, our district, we don't have a policy or procedures that we're following. So one building might be more diligent than another, just in their interpretation of what's a serious behavior versus what's not. And so that's kind of what we need to
I would say that there, at least from what I know, from having regular conversation with the principals and whatnot, I don't think we have 500 of what the state would say are reportable incidences, but we probably have 500 incidences where someone has felt that there's been a serious situation that needs attention. And so, you know, I think that's where we need to do some calibration so that we're understanding exactly what's required in each of the categories. And you know, the same is true with minor incidents. You know, there might be something that a student does in one school that means you're down to the office, and in another school that's not the culture, and so that's handled very differently. So what you're seeing there is what is being collected right now, and the work ahead is in sorting that out and having some calibration in a way that gives us greater confidence that it makes what we're really working our way through visible in a way that we can take action around it.
Is there? Ellen.
Thanks, Sonia. I had an internet glitch when you were presenting on the panorama data, so I just wanted to clarify something that you may have already said.
Sure.
Those two slides, there's the current year slide that you're showing now,
yep.
And then the next slide explains that it's panorama over time.
Over time as in from last year to now.
Got it. So from last year to now, so are these charts showing standing percentages, like that we're at 72% favorable on self-management, or is it a growth of 72% favorable?
72.
Like a change. Sorry.
It's 72% standing, which is a 9% or 9-point increase from last year.
Got it. Okay, great. And then in the middle is just comparing where we compare as of now. That's where that 72% compares nationally.
Not nationally, within our district.
The header says nationally.
Yeah, there are metrics that you can use to do national, but when I pulled this, I realized that it was actually just our district after it was already given to you all.
Oh, got it.
But I have the capability of changing it and showing national, but I did it for our district.
So that 72% favorable is in the 40th to 59th percentile of what?
Of our district average. Is that what you're asking? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I had just been reading that as like, oh, it's right in the middle of the national average, but it's our district average. Okay. I mean, I just need to process this, but thank you. That was, I just missed that when you were presenting on it.
Yeah, sorry. I know it said national on your papers.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have a question? Then, if not, Steve Cash.
On this slide, it is interesting that every single percentage drops going from elementaries to secondary.
Mm-hmm.
And is that something for any of the educators in the room that is just kind of expected as you go from elementary to secondary? Is that how it usually goes, or is that?
I mean, I you know, it might be helpful to have Caitlin's long-term perspective on this. One of the things that is challenging about this tool is that we administer it, I think, 3 times a year, and so and it's 3 times a year for many grades for a while, right? So I think one of the things that we need to be looking into more deeply and maybe ask our students about a little bit is how are they receiving that tool as they're older, because they're sometimes you can end up with an assessment bias, right, that's built in, and again, Caitlin, I don't know if you have some other perspectives to share, but
I think that's very accurate. I think that we are overusing the tool, and the students are receiving it with a level of ennui. And I think that with all of our assessment tools, it's always really important to think about what are we measuring and then what are we doing with those measurements. Mm-hmm. So I think that we've had some conversations about how frequently do we mean to be using this and to what end. Yeah. I don't know if it's typical that we would see the decline you're seeing from elementary to secondary or not. I don't know if that's developmentally appropriate. I think it's an interesting question that I haven't explored.
All right. Yeah, it's just for things like emotion regulation, I would just think you might see some percentages go up and then other things go down, just as kind of people realize more of their position in the world. And so it's just interesting to see a decline.
It's also a thing that seems like it would be really different from middle school to high school. And here those are compressed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Suzanne Nava has her hand up.
Nava?
Yeah, I just was thinking, like, you were talking about, like, how, accurate, or not accurate, but, like, how good of a representation it is. And it just made me think, like, I think we just took a panorama. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Ms. Steele's nodding. And I don't know, I think I can probably speak to that pretty well about how, like, students in the high school kind of view that. And I think a lot of the time it's seen as a task or a chore, and I don't think people take a lot of time to carefully look through the questions or give kind of an in-depth answer. And that's valid, and I think it's because probably, they're sent out so often and repeated, and there's not exactly like a specific time blocked away to do it. I mean, they try to do it in TAs, but like it's difficult. So I think like a lack of interest, I guess, towards it means results, and not in a bad way, but I do think that it's really, like, I've never seen the data before now. And I think that might be something interesting, like a way for the students at the high school and other schools to see, like, okay, like the information you put on here genuinely does have an impact. And then also what you were saying about how teachers in the younger grades will make their own assessments of the younger kids. It makes me think of how we have work habits at our school, and I wonder if something like that would be helpful to look at trends in students' work habits over a longer period of time throughout high school. And I don't know if you're already doing that or whatever, but I just didn't know if that would be helpful. So
no, I've actually been connected with our counselors on, well, not only looking at the questions, but thinking about what we're doing with the data after we've collected it. So we also don't have a clear process or guidance on what they should be doing with the data once they've collected it. And so some of the things that you've said, I think is good food for thought on as we do that work, thinking about connecting with the students as well and getting their perspectives.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for doing this whole presentation. I have to go because I have to go to my other Zoom call, but I wanted to say thank you, and I think it's really cool to see all of this different positive impact happening. So
thank you.
Have a good night.
Is there anybody else online? I don't see any other hands raised. Nope. Steve. Oh, Mary Heather, and then Steve.
Steve, go ahead. Actually, I want to formulate my thoughts.
Well, this is my second go, so.
It's fine.
Oh, okay.
She's formulating.
Got it. Okay, so when you were doing the panorama data, and you said that the lines, the horizontal lines, are schools, and I can speculate, just like I'm going to speculate here on the data, but I can speculate why you wouldn't want to identify the schools, but that leaves a lot of unanswered questions for me, because if let's just take the secondary for example. If the bottom is the middle school and the top is the high school, something not good is happening. If the top is the middle school and the bottom is the high school, then something good is happening. Also, one of those 6 horizontal lines for the elementaries is half of the students in the district. And that would skew us from knowing when we go to the secondary, because the weight of students coming in, if middle school is that low one, then that means one of those schools over there that's doing really well is contributing a lot of students. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I hear you.
And I'm not, and I don't want to, make wild accusations or, but this is almost creating more questions than it's answering for me, because I'm going, we got 2 schools here, 2 elementary schools here that are clearly struggling. And we got 2 schools that are clearly doing very well. And it would be nice to know who's being successful and who needs help. And I understand that it gets into this building versus that building, but if we're going to allocate resources to the places where they're needed, it would be nice to know that like we do it with academics, because we looked at this stuff and said, this school's struggling a little bit with academics. What resources can we send there to help them? And I feel the same way about this, because this is a little more slippery than academics. It's social emotional. And so what would that look like to be able to allocate more resources to a building, or say, you guys are doing this right, what can we learn from that, and what can we translate to other schools in the district? So I'll stop talking, but
no, that was
I have a similar question.
Okay.
I also have a different one. But
and I mean, I can speak to that a little bit. I think the panorama data has been used for, the panorama survey has been used for a very long time. I don't know if Caitlin or Courtney, which one of you has the longevity star, but I don't know. Is it 10 years perhaps even?
17.
I was going to say 7.
17. It was when Shauna leave.
Oh, in 2017.
Yeah, but I think it's actually later than that. When we had a 1-year SEL coordinator who implemented Panorama I want to say on the brink of COVID.
So it's been run on autopilot for some time, and I believe the principals across the district would find it a fair statement for me to say that the data has not been utilized in a manner that would have allowed them intentional action in order to address the areas in the way that the Panorama survey collects the data. They have not had training on that. They have not had a way to move that forward. And so it was my choice, frankly, to leave the schools off, because I don't think that's really where we are in that conversation right now. Where we are in the conversation is Sonia's good work to put it together in a way that we can highlight that we have a tool, highlight the areas that are measured by the tool, which is a useful way to be thinking about social and emotional development in kids of multiple ages, and to say to you that we have work to do to be able to think about how we want to use this tool meaningfully moving forward. What is the training that you need, and what are, just like in the classroom, if we only showed you the VTCAP data and we didn't talk about anything else, right? That's a little bit of sort of where we are here. So as Sonia comes back to you next year, she will be talking about it differently. This is very much like, okay, here's this piece of information that we have, and we want to share it with you so that you're seeing a little bit of what this conversation looks like at this stage. When she comes back next year, that will look different. And I think that the principals are ready to engage in conversation about what this looks like, how we mean to measure and think about these things, and what also are the mitigating the more on the ground pieces, like perhaps the work habits that Nava mentioned, and other things that roll up into that are important. So it's just not time for that discussion yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mary Other.
Yeah, I mean, with respect to this, I mean, I can certainly appreciate that this is that the data that we're looking at are not calibrated, and
Right.
that's could be a large part of the
Yep.
differential that we're seeing. So I don't necessarily, I'm not necessarily like, oh my God, we've got to do something now. I understand that we're just starting to sort of get the vitals.
Yeah.
And obviously it will be helpful, and I think all of us sitting on the board will be eagerly awaiting, what things look like next year comparatively, anticipating that there will have been some calibration so that the data we're seeing is meaningful. I do wonder about the effort and time it takes for schools to gather this, and to what extent that has influenced in the past the level of effort that was put into this tool. So I'm curious whether it's a sustainable tool. And then I also just have a question about some of the prior information you were sharing about chronic absenteeism.
Sure.
When you shared the numbers for the chronic absenteeism, and then shared in particular like Vermont's numbers, I was kind of shocked. I mean, my jaw sort of dropped, but I have no idea where that falls with respect to national averages or regional averages. I mean, 22% or 25% chronic absenteeism seems like,
As reported by the secretary.
pearl clutching to me, but
So I don't know what that data entailed, in
Yeah.
that respect. So that's important. I'm sorry, Sonia.
No, you're okay. I was saying I think national data is right around there too. I think it might be 28. I don't quote me on the.
Wow.
It's in the 20s.
Yeah.
It's high.
It's high.
One day every 2 weeks
I
being
mean,
absent, right?
that is-
This is the 10%.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the chronic
Yeah.
absenteeism
That's the
threshold.
threat, yeah.
I mean, that is like the first thing to address with respect to access and kids keeping up with curriculum. I just think that I'm very grateful for the work that you're doing to work on this, as a district and, as a county, and this just seems like incredibly important. And I guess I'm wondering what tools there are to to tackle that. Because, you know, certainly I hear what you're saying with, you know, if kids feel welcome, but, you know, they're more likely to come. But I also wonder about just other barriers. Are there other barriers that we're not looking at that we should be considering?
Yeah, we've had discussions about potential barriers. In fact, on our last in-service day, I had Heidi Shoemaker come talk to all the teams I support. So she met with the SRCs, counselors, social workers, nurses, behavior consultants, behavior specialists, and we had a really nice discussion about identifying barriers, strategies we can use to get ahead of attendance. She was also pointing out that attendance is likely one of the biggest pulse checks you can have for student success. So looking at that data is really, really important. And I wanted all the teams that I support to know how their roles could help with attendance, and so that was nice. I do think that as we're looking ahead with the Addison County Chronic Absenteeism Committee, we brainstormed. We just had a meeting on this past Friday, and we discussed the draft that is started on getting, you know, ahead of factors that would contribute to chronic absenteeism. And there's some districts in Vermont that are having a lot of success with I guess it's a mentor program where there's an adult who checks in on the student and connects with the families, and there's a lot of different things that could be done to get ahead of it. And we look a lot to Attendance Works. They have a lot of great resources that I've told all of our building principals about, so they know, I hope, to go there and and get some ideas on how to address chronic absenteeism and truancy.
Does Ron still have his hand up online?
Ellen had her hand up first.
Well, she's already had it, so I'd like to go to Ron first, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Effline, thanks so much. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but really appreciate this presentation. I was curious, based on the kind of the 6 months of conversations you've been having with your colleagues and with other educators, if this panorama data feels like it matches up to what you've been hearing.
I think it does. I have faith in the quality of the Panorama SEL survey. What I'm not as confident about at this moment is what we're doing with it. So it's less about the reliability of it to me, and more about where we're going with it and how we're going to help students who have behavior issues or, you know, mental health areas that they need support with. Caitlin, I hate to put you on the spot, but do you have any thoughts on the Panorama survey? I know you don't think we maybe should do it as frequently. We maybe can reduce the amount of times we give it, but what do you think about the quality of the...
I agree with you that I'm not concerned about the validity of the tool. I think it's an effective tool. I think that our implementation is a little bit weak, but we've been in that conversation for a while. Last year in the high school, our counselors, I don't think it was only our counselors, but a team including our counselors came up with recommendations. There are subsets of questions in the Panorama survey that you can draw from, and there are ways that you can, doesn't matter. They had recommendations for how we could fine-tune the actual instrument that we're using by selecting different subsets of questions. You have to do that carefully to protect the validity of the tool, but they were well informed on that front. And we didn't make those changes because we had other changes that were coming, right? And we knew that this focus was coming. We have talked about implementing it less frequently, and I really appreciated Nava's thoughts about how to bring the data to the students so that they have a sense of what it's for and what it could mean. So I think that the conversation will be rich when we set aside the time to do that.
Now, Ron?
Ellen.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. You all set then, Ron? And then we'll go to Ellen.
Thank you. I just wanted to caution us against using language like what schools are doing right, or I think that implies what schools are doing wrong when we're talking about the panorama survey, and being more nuanced in the language that we use when we talk about this. I appreciate all the reasons why we're not looking at this by school, including just the need to understand how students are doing and occasionally not obsessing over geography and building location, and instead looking at this as like a holistic, comprehensive population of kids. And I understand the argument or the conversation around resources, and I always appreciate the way that our district leaders come to us and let us know where the resources can help, but I really don't like using the panorama survey data to start issuing, even casually, sort of what sounds like report cards on schools, which are obviously buildings full of people, and what they are or are not doing right or wrong. I think this tells us where kids are, how they're reporting where they're at, and as we engage with it, we need to be careful to be more nuanced in how we talk about it.
Are there any other comments or questions? Steve?
Yeah, one, Dr. Afline, I just want to say thank you for presenting this. I think anytime you're the first to do anything, it's even more challenging. So knowing that we have this whole collection of data and then it's given to you and it's like, okay, share this. That's not an easy position to navigate, so thank you. And I do, kind of building on some of what Ellen said, I do hope that we can think broadly, because I suspect a large part of the minors and the majors and the HHB conversations, a lot of that probably cuts across all buildings and across all ages. And I just really encourage us to think big about anything we can do to support students that are having a hard time, regardless of what school they go to, regardless of what grade they're in, because those are all students that we should try to lift up. And I also think we should tread with a whole lot of caution, because early on you said when students feel like they belong, they are more likely to attend. Some of the decisions this board makes may influence students kind of how much they feel they belong. And I'm thinking of schools that we've made decisions about and where students are attending this year. And so for us to identify and say, these students don't feel like they belong, what is the cause and what is the effect? And I'm very glad that this presentation doesn't have schools in it, because there could be students in there that may not feel like they belong, not due to the school that they're going to, but as part of the decision we as a board make. And we need to fully take ownership of that and not put that blame on the students. So I really appreciate how this was done, and I hope we all can focus on addressing the needs of the students that exist and moving forward from there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you for that. That was really great.
I think when Sonia arrived just 7 months ago from outside of Chicago, she was astounded by the long list of committees that she would be joining and whatnot. But you know, if we're really going to understand how the different experiences of students vary, then you have to be where the students are. You have to start looking for how their experience is coming to life. And so she's done that well as she's joined us, and It's been a pleasure to hear both Dr. Colasso and Dr. Apeline, in public. It's appreciate their transition. It's not an easy one, but you only have to do your first year once. So, okay. So the other part of the superintendent's report is our standing legislative and/or AOE update, and the legislative piece that I might draw your attention to is that the House Education Committee is looking at a map of districts. That map can be it was created by Representative Conlon to try to come up with districts that were between 2,000 and 4,000 with somewhat close grand list values in educational and community areas that seemed like they might be somewhat aligned in order to begin a conversation about whether or not that committee could come to consensus on any redistricting map. So I don't know that Representative Conlon feels that his map is the map that should be going anyway, exactly as it is or otherwise, but that's important. They recently had Dr. Baker from Rutgers testify. He has done some work in the state of Vermont. He might have done the 22nd governance study. I did the 20th. I think we're on 25 at this point, relative to what types of governance structures we should have. And he also did some work on the 2018 Act 173 funding report that came out and that I know caused a lot of adjustment in the way that we think about it and brought about the spending threshold and many other things. So he worked with the UVM professors around that. His testimony led the committee to believe that there really are not measurable savings in district consolidation. The only measurable savings across the country in district consolidation is actually school consolidation that is better facilitated by district consolidation. So he delivered that message very loudly during his presentation, and that's I've shared the links with you in case you wish to catch up. So we're regularly watching both House and Senate Education Committees as well as the two finance committees. There's a lot of concern relative to the S220, which is the spending cap proposal, because it feels like 65% of the districts actually, would have their spending significantly held in Vermont if the 3% cap related to long-term weighted average daily membership were to go into play. The Senate Ed Committee led by Senator Hardy is pushing back on that proposal pretty substantially, thinking, okay, well, if this is an issue, we already have a spending threshold. We already have that in place. That already came through legislation. Why would we be changing that at this point? That's what districts around the state are working on. What is the impetus for changing that, especially to a number and calculation that seems difficult to grab? So those conversations are happening there. I understand the Senate Ed will soon see a bill that looks at one district for the state. So that's coming.
Because I missed that one.
That's coming. Hasn't come out yet, but that's the word. So, we're keeping close attention. And it's really time for just any questions that you might have that I could shed some light on or provide resources to.
Ellen.
Wendy, it feels like, and I don't know, I cannot recall, others here, including you may know, the crossover deadline in March for when bills need to switch bodies for consideration, which I always think of as kind of a this is getting real moment. So everything that you're describing feels like spaghetti on the wall stuff, right? Like just continuing to throw things up and see what sticks. Which for, almost mid-February feels a little chaotic. as a bystander. I'm curious if you are picking up anything, or if there's any conversations where it feels like there's momentum or any like coalescing around certain things as the crossover deadline approaches.
I don't see evidence of coalescence yet. I think I think the legislators all got the message that Vermonters were not interested in a lot of the things that they had put forward, and yet the need for tax relief feels real. The governor obviously is putting a lot of pressure on the situation, and so they're trying to discern what the path forward might be, and I think right now it would be safe to say that feels unclear. It does I don't think, someone I was talking with today said, I don't think the legislature knows itself what it wants, based on all the feedback and all the and how to make sense of everything all at once, which is that's a tough place to be. And I think they're trying to work it out the best they can. Yeah, I think there's the leadership, in the House and probably the Senate to an extent are still of the mindset that the redistricting is important. We'll see whether that carries enough in this second year of the biennium in order to produce something that moves us forward. The foundation formula does not happen until after a district map is agreed upon. So whether that's going to be the case is really the point of question for the moment.
Steve Borzik.
Has anybody brought up the fact that that foundation formula is going to create difficulties in maintenance of effort? Because it's, just drawing from our own presentation, we have $2 million for outplacements for approximately 20 students. There's no way a foundation formula can address that. And what they're saying, is like this collection of services that they're trying to do with the BOCES and that sort of thing. There's no way to do that. That's why we have to have those outplacements, because as a district, we just can't provide those services. And they seem to be totally ignoring all the special education, all the maintenance of effort, things that we are required by law to do. And they're saying, here's your pot of money and you make it work. And that just seems like somebody's not hearing that.
There's maintenance of effort. That's a challenge. Some of the superintendents have said, okay, you've got some of these districts that have 1,000 square miles, and then some of them that have 50 square miles with the same number of students. If everybody's getting the same number of dollars per kid, there's a service difference there, no matter how you slice that. Some districts are nestled within municipalities that provide public transportation that is not part of the education budget, that provide maintenance for parks and school grounds, recreation, all of those pieces. So again, that's not part of the school budget. There are a lot of differences. I think all of that is being documented. I've shared that, $2 million, which is 4% roughly of our budget, is spent on, sort of social worker supports and other things that, Representative Holcomb has testified on. I think, there's a lot of that information, so much of that information that I think they will probably have to make some significant changes to the foundation formula. I think one of the difficulties is that it's becoming clearer that this is not a proposal that is saving the dollars. People are looking for the dollars. If the dollars were clear, they would have been obvious already. And it's not that there won't be some dollars. We are always trying to do things more efficiently, but dollars on a massive scale, billions of dollars, are not showing themselves yet. And I think that's what's causing some of the struggle. So we'll just have to see how they come out, and it's not easy work.
No. Any others? I don't see any hands of our peoples online. Any more questions here? You have an other on there?
We're okay. We're fine. Yep. Thank
Okay.
you. We always put the other on there, right, just in case. Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure there was no other.
Not tonight. Thank you.
So the board self-evaluation is in your board pack. It's there currently for you to peruse, to read through it, come up with questions. It will be used and come back again. Some of the answers will also support the board work with the superintendent's evaluation. So we're not planning on having a conversation about it. We wanted you to have the information so that you could start thinking about it. More than likely, there'll be more conversations in March and then at a future board retreat particular to this. Okay. Salisbury and Middlebury currently do not have board candidates. Thank you. It's been a long day. There is a specific process if people want to run as a write-in candidate, and there is a certain number of votes that they must attain as a write-in. Those are all in state statutes. I believe from what I read and spoke with someone else about it, you have to fill out a form saying that you're willing to accept the office should you get elected as a write-in, and you have to have the same number. Well, you have to have at least, so if you have to have 60 signatures to get on the ballot, you have to have at least 60 votes to win your office from what we have looked up on statute.
Okay. The advice I got on that was that it's the lower of 1% or 30, because if you're in like someone from Salisbury doesn't need 60 votes, they need 30 votes. And so it's the lower of across the district.
Okay.
Rather than
we
60
were just,
I don't think that's correct. I think everybody running for ACSD needs 60. It doesn't matter what town you come from, because everybody
that put a petition in had to have
district,
60 votes.
so-
They
60,
did.
yep.
So whether it's Salisbury or Middlebury, they would need 60.
Yeah. So, I mean, I spoke with a lawyer that was running into the same issue on his board, and he was like, yep, but I mean, 60 is not terribly large for a write-in.
Yeah, and it's votes. It's not signatures that you have to get on a petition.
Right.
You just have to that's the threshold that you have to.
Right.
So we don't get a Bodie McBoatface on the
Yeah.
school board, right?
So that is. So if you know of anybody that would like to run for Salisbury or for the Middlebury open position, please encourage them to.
We can send out clarified guidance, just so everybody's got the same information.
Yeah. And I don't have any others. Mary Heather, do you have any others?
No, I guess the only thing just to follow up on that is if anybody thinks of someone who might be interested, definitely encourage them to send an email to just the board email so that, any or all of us can respond with the answers to the questions that people might have about like the time commitment and just what's involved and that sort of thing. I think we should be ready and willing to help encourage people.
Right. And I've been trying to find someone. I haven't been very successful yet. Sorry. Jason.
And if those seats remain vacant, what is the process then?
Then people would apply to the ACSD board and we appoint. But I also think that the selectmen sometimes have a say if they want to put a name forward.
The board appoints, for the term. So, again, we can put that in the guidance as well.
And is it
just in case?
Because there would be a complete term, so it wouldn't be a partial term. So that
depends when you got an applicant.
Exactly.
So lots of statutory questions. So that's all we have for there. Jason, I will turn it over to you for the facilities committee.
Excellent. Yes. So tonight we're going to be joined by Jamie Northrup, and he came before the facilities committee a couple months ago and presented a proposal around turf field and related project. the facilities committee felt pretty strongly that it was not something that they could handle on their own and should just come right before the full board for consideration. So, Jeannie, I have your presentation.
Sure. And I'm going to be joined by Court and pass it to Court Sean in a sec. So, hi everybody, Jamie. So I've been, over the last 5 or 6 years, been involved in discussing with community members about a field turf field for access for particularly spring sports. And as that's gone on, we've got a ton of community feedback and support from different constituencies, and we have gathered funds to support the feasibility study, which we'll talk about tonight. So privately from individuals and from the Middlebury Youth Lacrosse Program and the Friends of Middlebury Lacrosse. And so we're here to discuss that today. I'm going to turn it over to Court and to Sean, and we'll be here to answer any questions.
Great, thanks Jamie. My name is Court Belanger from Middlebury, and I'm president of the Middlebury Youth Lacrosse League and Friends of Middlebury Lacrosse, which is essentially the booster for the high schools and high school teams. So the turf field in Middlebury has been a priority for decades among the supporters of youth and scholastic sports, so I appreciate the time to talk about this today. I'm also a coach of youth lacrosse, and we've for the past 11 years, and it's every year it gets more and more challenging for access to fields. We talk about there's basically 6 months a year we have of usable fields, but that has been changing. Even in June, I know the varsity or the girls and boys lacrosse teams had to go practice at the college because the fields were flooded. So it's an alarming trend that's probably still going in the wrong direction. I think that the proposed field that we've talked about will primarily benefit MUHS students, not just athletes. I think Sean will talk about the benefits to expanding PE, access to space for PE and other extracurricular activities. But overall, we believe that a turf field is a cost-effective way to enhance the school's physical plan and also offer benefits to the community. So as you see the project overview, I won't go into too much detail, but it's approximately 100,000 square feet of synthetic turf, and it would be basically go right now where Doc Collins Fields is located. So as you can see, there's a increase in the there's a new section down at the end that sort of formalizes a sort of a playing area, sort of a warm-up area or an extra space for a different program to be working at the same time while the field is in use. Right now it would basically be usable for all of the sports teams, all the field-based sports teams, for both the fall and the spring seasons, and it could conceivably be used in the winter depending on how much snow is on the field. And the construction timeline, it's about 3 to 4 months. I'll get into a little bit of that later. And just one thing to reinforce is that this process would have strict standards for safety testing, make sure the field is safe for the students and the other community members who use it, and also not have no negative impact on the environment of the area. Thank you. So what we're really talking about tonight is starting with a feasibility study, which will provide hard numbers on the budget and the timeline for the field. It looks like it's going to be about $25,000 to $30,000. We've been working to raise those funds privately, so with local nonprofits and members of our community. We've made good progress. We're not quite there yet, but we're confident we will be able to get there for that, to make that happen. And the current idea is it's actually, we said spring here, but it's really probably going to be more like late summer, early fall to conduct the proposal, conduct this feasibility study, because there's a shelf life for it. We want to make sure that it extends into 2027, when we hope the construction season could potentially start. So the number that we've come up with for a project is based on some research, but it's, as I said, not set in stone at all. It is $2 million to $2.2 million. And what does that include? It's the turf itself. So first of all, it's the site construction, so the earthwork, drainage, things around that. The synthetic turf would also be part of it, and also the markings of the fields, which would allow all the teams to play, and not just right now it's like lined for football, but it would be lined for all the sports that would be using it. And then also safety netting. This is important in like lacrosse. There's a lot of lacrosse balls, but it would allow people to watch the sports. The spectator safety, other player safety, and right now, so it would make the field usable for that. This also includes the design, construction, and the testing, as I mentioned before. The one thing that would really also be decided by we find out through the feasibility study is how what the cost would be, but also there are opportunities to finance this. So it would be like, if it were 2 million or 2.2 million, it'd be whatever, a little over 200,000 per year, and then for 10 years, and then that would be so you wouldn't have to pay for it all at once, and there would be a refresh cycle that would go moving forward, at that point would have for maintenance, and it would be much smaller number. But we'll get all that information to be able to provide to you, when we do the feasibility study, and so you make an informed decision on that. I don't know if anyone has any questions before Sean jumps in, but
yeah, take that, yeah. So, just to give you some history, this discussion started in 2011, is when we had our first company come in and give us an assessment, and it's always been something that we've talked about, and when Jamie and Court and Dave Donahue and Matt Rizzo, who's also one of our coaches, came forward, I said, what we need to do is it has to come before the board. It has to be presented here, because this feasibility study is basically giving us hard numbers for a year to move forward. So that's the goal, is in that year, then we're able to go to construction. And then we had done this once before in 2011. It was much cheaper back then. Actually, Friends of Middlebury Football paid for it. It was about $1,500. And had a binder like this thick that I know Victoria Jetty took once as a board member to look over and want to pursue it. So the motive for us to do this is to benefit our students, obviously. We pulled some data like PE and things like that. The PE teachers would love to be able to go out onto that field more than they do. When we have significant rains, it makes it challenging for us to use any outdoor field. So it's not just about our athletic programs. It certainly will assist our athletic programs in giving us an opportunity to be able to have a practice facility as well as a game facility. I'm not sure which slide it's on, but well, we can go to the next one, Jason. Those are the numbers that we have of our student athletes. If you add up each team, there is multi-sport athletes, so the 285 just represents per season how many students that we would have accessing facilities, even though it may not be 285 different kids, if that makes any sense. So if you're a soccer player and lacrosse player, you're counted twice as one individual. It does enable us to put everybody on that field, which has been an issue for me since I got here. It is not a suitable field as is to put a soccer field on. Any sport where the ball is going to be rolling on the actual turf, because it's utilized in the fall as a football field. The surface is not appropriate, especially field hockey. The ball would disappear sometimes if the ruts that are created from a football game. We had a football playoff game this year in pouring rain, and if we had a field hockey game the next day, it would never have happened. So it does provide us an opportunity to have some equity in who's utilizing would be considered the premier location. And that's why we're choosing this space, because of the infrastructure and everything that we have surrounding that field. It makes a lot more sense than going over to Creek Road and utilizing Fuchili Field or putting a turf there, because we just don't have the infrastructure to support a large event. It's hard enough for a soccer game with the parking over there, let alone adding larger sports. The other issue that is important to me is the academic support for our students. So currently, Middlebury College is allowing us to use their facilities, but it's when they're not using it. So that is 6 a.m. for our boys lacrosse. Sometimes girls lacrosse went at 5 a.m. I think that's a personal choice. But so 6 a.m. is when really we're over there using their facilities. And thank God for Middlebury College. They're wonderful to us. But we have access when it's available to us and they're not using it. And it's not just about is lacrosse team using it, it's also all their clubs and intramurals and things like that we all stack behind. So it makes it really challenging. We did have one year that we went 6 weeks over there at 6 o'clock in the morning because we did not have suitable spaces here. And that gets us into games. So we may have played at St. Albans on Tuesday night, and then we have a Wednesday practice. The only time we can practice is 6 a.m. We got home at 9:30, 10, and now we're practicing at 6 a.m. So that wears on the kids after a while. I think for a little while it's good. They like having morning practice and then they're free in the afternoon. But once you get into the games, it becomes a real challenge. So having our own facility that we can schedule ourselves and rotate teams through is helpful. The diagram where it showed the additional turf on the end, the idea behind that it's 30 yards by 50 yards, is we could put a practice there, and let's say we're doing girls lacrosse on the big field, we could put baseball or softball on that practice area in the end to give them an opportunity to be outside as well. It's not a traditional space for them, but there's drills that they could do and they could utilize it. So we would have that flexibility in scheduling to be able to utilize both spaces. And that's why when we originally did this in 2011, we wanted to go all the way through and turf. If you've ever been to a football game, that's where the middle schoolers play the whole time during the football game and don't pay attention to the game at all. So that's a space that we would be able to expand. It would increase the netting we need in order to do that. Because of the way our parking lot is built, it kind of wraps around that field, which wasn't true back in the 90s when they actually had a couple of lacrosse games. They played night games up there. The parking lot wasn't extended, and I still don't know how cars didn't get damaged because the way those lacrosse balls, especially the boys, fly, they're all over the place. So the goal is to give practice facilities as well as game facilities for multi-sports. And as you can see, there's a lot of lines on here. People complain a little bit about turf fields because there's so many lines, but I would rather have all those lines and give everybody the opportunity. Just checking my slides.
Yeah, Jason, you can flip ahead, I think.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So, again, the access is what I just referred to. We're not unique. There are a lot of turf fields out in Vermont now in high schools. It wasn't true 23 years ago when I started. At the bottom, you can see where there are fields. Rutland, Burlington, and South Burlington were the first three. They've had at least 15 to 18 years. Rice added new field last year. Burnburn has had one for a while. They added a second one last year. St. Johnsbury was about 3 years ago that they added theirs. And then CBU is proposing theirs. I know Mount Anthony's also going through the process to add a turf field. So again, we're not unique in that way. But again, I think one of the things for us that we are unique is there's not a lot of schools that have a river that runs right next to all their athletic fields that floods annually. When you see the geese swimming on your lacrosse field, it takes a long time for it to drain out, especially with the Addison County clay that we have. You can go to the next slide, Jason. Thanks. Again, we're talking about supporting all of our community. We have youth football that's already at the high school. Also the youth lacrosse, obviously. And I could see it just opening up other opportunities for other schools to come in and use it. And it would just be the responsibility of the athletic director to do all the scheduling, which is possible. I mean, there's other communities that do it. The reality about some of our fields, when it talks about reduce the maintenance and preserves grass fields, Fuchili Field, which is the one off Creek Road by the town gym, is our newest field that we have. It was built in 2003. It is in desperate need of some support, and to the point where I was exploring netting this field here so we could move lacrosse up. When it has lacrosse in the spring and soccer in the fall, it is getting compacted to the point it didn't have enough soil when they built it because they ran into ledge, so they ran out of money. So something had to go, and it's not a great field right now. It's lovely to sit there and watch a game. It's a beautiful place to watch a game. But the field itself is like concrete when it's dry, and it's like soup when it's wet. And there's not enough soil to really hold the grass, so we're losing any quality grass that we have. If you go out there in the summer, it looks like lime green because it's all crabgrass. It's in desperate need of rest. We did that with Jetty Field. We rototilled the whole field, or harrowed it, and then leveled it all out, and you have to stay off it for a year and a half in order to make that work. That field is ready. I mean, it's been 23 years, so it's time. And so by having the turf field, it takes some pressure off that, and we can can do some work there. Doesn't mean we're retiring all our fields because we have a turf field. We will still need practice facilities. We'll still have to mow. We'll still have to paint. We'll reduce what we have to do, and the turf field maintenance is less. There are two pieces of equipment that we would purchase as part of this project. One basically sweeps any debris, and the other one levels out the infill. But it is significantly less than what we have to do now. We talked about the improves equity, safety, inclusion. And again, like I said, I think we can maximize the scheduling, especially with that extra turf on the end. The biggest thing is just having the ability to move forward, have the study done to really know exactly what it's going to cost. The numbers we got came from the field turf reps. They basically said this, they've seen the field. They came and did a site visit, so they're working off what they have done for other fields. They put in the 6 fields over at Middlebury College, the turf fields that they have. So it's the same product at Middlebury College and same company. So they know the area, they know the soils, so that they feel pretty confident about the numbers, but they don't really know until they can come in and do the true study. And like I said earlier, it's a lot of money to put forward. So if we're going to do it, something that we then should be moving forward with the project.
And I'll just add to that. So the reason why we came on you, like we have raised a majority of the money. We feel like Court said, confident that we can finish the rest of it to cover the feasibility study. It's something that our group of supporters wants to move forward. Obviously, Doc Collins is our first choice. I think part of the conversation tonight is to open it up to the board to answer some questions and see if it's something they're interested in looking at long term. We're going to try and put our support behind something. So whether you'd like it to be Doc Collins, and if it needs to be somewhere else, then I think you all have the first conversation. So thanks.
So board, the presentation was warned as a presentation, not as an action item, so that it will give you all a chance to think about it, ask your questions, and if there's more questions you need answers to, then we can put it back on the board agenda for the next time as an action item or for more information if that's what people need. So I'm going to open the floor for questions and comments. Laura.
What is the projected lifespan on a turf field?
The fiber section of it, because the biggest part of the cost is the infrastructure underneath, like Corbin said. The lifespan is at 10 to 12 years. It's all UV related, more so than actual use of the field. So I would say Burlington just replaced theirs after, I think, 14 years.
Are you saying you're replacing the top level?
Yeah, basically the grass looking part, the carpet is what they would call it. Because like I said, it's a plastic, so it will break down after a while, but mostly not really from running on it, but more from the UV.
And is this feasibility study just looking at the one turf field, or is it assessing kind of all of our fields as a district to see if there's...
No, it's just we're telling them where we think we want it.
Just for
they'll assess that space only.
Jason and Steve.
We'll clarify one thing, because it does say that baseball and softball athletes could use it. That would be as a practice space only. It would not be sufficient to host baseball games or softball games on the turf field. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. And then the question is, like, if you guys are going to raise the money for this, then what are you looking at? What do you want from the board?
So I think they're raising the money for the study alone, and what that gives you is a guaranteed price tag for 1 year. So what we're looking for the board ultimately is we do the study, we get the numbers, then we put it before the taxpayers to decide if they want to fund the field or however we go about it, whether it's a bond or just part of our budget. So it's really about, can we move forward with it once we have the study? I think it would be a shame to do the study and then shelf it, because anything we just learn won't be good in a year. Or we just say, okay, we got this plus 10%.
So if it's a hard no, you want to know that now. If it's not a hard no, then
I think if it's something that's not under serious consideration, then we're going to go look for other facilities to put the feasibility study. That has to get done no matter what. So whether it's a privately done one or it's done on the town fields, we need to know how much the hard dollars are, because there's the pay up front or there's the basically take out the loan. So I think if there's a serious consideration and discussion at the board level, our group is willing to put the feasibility study behind that. If it's like, hey, we're not going to consider this, it's not the right time, then we will go somewhere else for that, for the feasibility study.
Was it you, Steve, that had a question?
Well, yeah, I did have a question.
Okay, and then I see that, I think it was Jamie that had his hand up, but I'm not positive.
You've kind of referred to a cost efficiency over time, and that this is going to be less expensive than maintaining a grass field. Is that going to recoup the $2 million, or is it going to be? Could you give me? I'm not asking you for a hard number here, but I'm saying, can you give us some perspective here? Because $2 million right now is a lot of money, and if there's any way you can.
Well, like I said, we still have to maintain our fields.
Yeah.
So what we have for campus still needs to be mowed, still needs to be painted. So there would be some savings because we're not going to maintain. Right now, we maintain 3. Well, depending on the season. So in the fall, we maintain 3 game fields, which are treated with more TLC than, let's say, a practice field. So when it comes to fertilizing, seeding, or top dressing, pesticide, herbicides, all that stuff that we're doing now on those 3 separate game fields to maintain them because of the use, we probably wouldn't go to that extent. I don't have the dollar amounts for that because we don't necessarily do that for our practice fields currently. So I can just see that, but it is not going to. It might recoup it in 30 years, but it's not going to be something that, because we built that, now we don't have to worry about this.
But more ballpark numbers. I mean, if it's going to be $10,000, or it's going to be $100,000, or it's going to be no.
I can't. I'd have to talk to Bruce McIntyre to see what facilities it's put into it, because it's kind of a separate budget. But I'm not going to make any promise that it's going to pay for it.
Okay.
It sounds to me like it's more of an upgrade in quality, upgrade in equity, upgrade in facility than a replacement in that way. Yeah.
Can I get to, I think it was, does Jamie still have his hand up?
No.
No. Okay, then Steve.
Ellen.
Trying to go to Ellen first. Is that the hand you were seeing?
I thought it was Jamie's hand, but
right,
you
I'll
go and then Ellen.
All right. So one question, a few comments. In this presentation, there's an 800-hour use up to a 2,000-hour use. Would that be feasible to schedule all 2,000 of those hours on one field? Is that doable?
I mean, yeah.
All right.
I mean, again, the reason that field is more attractive to us is we have lights. So we can turn the lights on if we need to extend practice times. It's much like the winter. We have practices in our gym until 8 o'clock at night. So if we have a need because we can't get down on the grass field, we can turn the lights on and we can stagger our practices. So like I was describing before, we could have 2 lacrosse teams on the main field, and then we can have alternate teams on that other field. So that's taking care of 3 teams in one time slot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Yeah, it's a lot of hours. If somebody says it's doable, that's great to hear. As far as comments, one, I think everyone's aware of the budget realities of schools and the conversations that are going on. I think something like this can be especially challenging in the same conversations as sending students that used to go to one elementary school to another elementary school. And so those are the challenges that we face. That's reality. The flip side of that is sites like this would be used by all students in the district. And I think that's very important for people to understand that everyone would have an equal opportunity to have this. I think it does leverage the existing infrastructure, which I think is really important for all of us to keep in mind. And it's one thing to look at a field, but then it's the other thing to think of stormwater infrastructure around that, parking lots, lighting. Those costs can quickly grow, I would imagine, when you're trying to manage, say, night games at 2 different places versus all of them in one or something like that. And that's certainly something that we're seeing in education, is just trying to leverage spaces and kind of increase our density in different areas. And then the other one is, as Wendy mentioned earlier, there's a lot going on with the redistricting conversation, but I do think we could see in the future a time where a high school looks more attractive that has a turf field as far as being an asset. We're not there yet. That may never come to fruition, but it could be part of the conversation going forward. So, yeah, just my comments at the moment.
Ellen, and then Jamie. Jamie's got his hand back up again.
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation and all of the information and the background on how long this has been an active conversation and a hope. I will say I think the timing on this is pretty brutal. Just in the year that we've looked at, rough estimates for sort of basic needs, and then more ambitious but not wildly ambitious building proposals or capital improvement needs in our buildings, and then the budget realities of putting out a bond for any of those, especially in light of the fact that from the legislature we don't know what version of a spending cap and the considerations of the money that goes into that cap that are going to be dinged against our budget. Just to say it very clearly, I would have a very hard time supporting that a bond go out for this project over any others at the high school or the middle school, certainly, to say nothing of other elementary schools where we have current needs or very likely future potential needs based on whatever needs to happen with the footprint of our schools. So the timing on this is really hard, and if part of what we're supposed to do tonight is indicate our level of support, mine is very low in this moment, unfortunately.
Thank you, Ellen. Jamie?
Yeah, thanks everyone. I was putting my hand up and down because people kept asking my question. And then, I guess my question now is it your thinking that you would need an answer or an answer from us before you would do the study, the feasibility study? Because my understanding was that it's sort of not worth it unless we then go through with it. Or was it the case that someone said the feasibility study has to happen regardless? And so I'm just curious on that part of the equation.
Yeah, I think that, for it to happen here at the high school, because again, there is this outside funding that wants to support a feasibility study. The high school is ideally the best place for this to happen in our community because, like I talked about before, the infrastructure and all that. So for the investment to happen, there has to be some sort of sense of support So they're not spending 20 to 30 grand to test everything here for the high school and then find out that it's not going to happen. So if the board isn't interested in moving that forward, whether it be timing is great or not, I totally get that. Then this group would say, okay, we still want to identify a space for a turf field in our community, and then they would move away and find a different location. So, is that
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unrealistic for us to say,
Thank you.
tell us yes or no right now. I think what we're saying is as long as there's a commitment to a robust conversation about it, and that we're with the group that we're representing who've committed their own money to this would like to see it happen at the high school. I think there's other conversations around if the board was to seriously consider it, could we go out and do private fundraising for other things like they did at Memorial? I think that's an open question. So I think that it's a commitment to have a honest and open conversation. Like, look, I got kids in the district. Like, I'm a taxpayer, so I understand the realities of the budget right now. And it wasn't good timing in 2011, and it was not going to be good timing in 2030. So. So I think it's an understanding that yes, the board is going to seriously consider it and discuss it. We can't say like we said $2 million. If it's $6 million, we're not like I don't think anybody has the expectation that's going to move forward. But I think as long as it's a conversation, then we're willing to continue to privately support it from the community. And I would say right now we have like this has been going on, even before 2011. We have a particular amount of support right now from people who are willing to write some checks to help support this. So this seems like, again, bad timing, sort of big picture, but better timing for the individuals who are willing to support it.
Mary Heather?
So I have a couple of questions. One specific around the support you're talking about. The support you're talking about from folks in the community is really directed toward the feasibility study, correct?
Yep.
Not any construction work or actual installation.
We haven't asked that yet.
Okay.
So that question I think it really depends on the site and the funding model that it takes, right? So if there's two different models, that one is you pay for it all up front, and another one that it's amortize it over however many years, I think that's a different conversation because those are different price tags on an annual basis. So we haven't gone out to our groups or the community more broadly to say, hey, yes, the field is going to be here, this is how much it's going to be, and here's how much we need to fundraise.
See, I think, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, that information would be important for the board in its consideration of whether or not it can support this. Because obviously we're in a really tough financial spot. The timing is very difficult. We have enormous capital improvement needs that are directly related to everyday student experience. And I don't intend to minimize the athletic or PE experience, because that is important as well. But I would agree with Ellen, on the list of priorities, it's probably not at the top. But it would seem to me that it would be important for us to know that if there's folks in the community who are willing to get behind this to help support it so that it's not a full bond project, that might be a little more palatable to consider. This is just my opinion. I'm not speaking on behalf of everyone else, but that just seems, we're really stuck. Yeah. So, and I guess I'm sort of curious, if you want to do it there, but if the board can't commit to following through, then, you're going to go to the town, I guess. I'm not sure where else you would go. Ultimately, you're still dealing with taxpayers and their willingness to fund something that in this current climate. So you're kind of in the same position, and that question of whether or not private donors are willing to help reduce that total expense is going to be relevant, whether you go to the town or whether you come to us. So I think that conversation, that question would be interesting for us to contemplate. But the other thing I just want to direct toward you, Sean, I'm just curious, I'm looking, I agree with Ellen completely about this is really rough timing, and I struggle to support it, even though I really want to support it. But I'm also looking at, our future, and the direction that our district is going, and the possibility that we may be a sort of a regional high school, and that we would want to upgrade our facilities to match the experience we want to provide for our kids, and the possibility that we're going to receive more kids. I'm curious whether, Sean, you, just your department, or you and Bruce have looked at, like, I'm thinking about, you know, the track athletes have the same problem and have to use the college's facility. And if you're looking at, you know, upgrading offerings for, you know, all of the students, like, have you contemplated, and is it even possible, you know, a sort of combined track and turf situation? Is that like something that's been contemplated or discussed? I know that obviously this is much broader than what you all are bringing to us, but from just a district perspective and a facilities perspective, and, you know, what we're offering our students and what we're providing at our campus, is that something that has been looked at all in the past?
We haven't had a company come in to give us an assessment on it. We don't have enough physical space
to do both.
Not in a floodplain to do it. So
Okay.
there's not enough space up at Don Collins. We barely have enough space to do it's within an NFHS guidelines for a soccer field. Our original plan in 2011 was to take down the bleachers on the visitor side, push it all back to get a full width soccer field. And we're not that far off from it with this design. I think he said we're 10 feet narrower than the full size that we could do. So a track would normally go on the outside of that, and there's just no place to go. So that whole bank would have to be built up. That would infringe on the baseball field. Then we'd have to move a baseball field.
Yeah.
Even if we put it down below by the creek,
then you're in the floodplain anyway.
Yeah, there's no way. It would have to be the best drainage in the world to stop the river from flowing up over it.
Yeah.
It's
So the only reason I asked this is because if you were gonna, you know, do this green light construction and then be like later down the road, oh, we want to upgrade.
Yeah.
You know, it would just be silly not to even just think about it and do the mental exercise, I guess.
As a former track coach, I would love to have a track in our school.
Yeah.
And again, we don't have the constraints with the track like we do with the turf fields.
For sure.
Because they do give us, we have after school until 5 o'clock and then they come out.
Yeah.
So that's a much better relationship far as access.
For sure.
But I'd love to put a track in.
I know I would too, but thank you.
This question is more for Matt. What are the possibilities of a public-private joint thing on this? I'm thinking of the college. You know, if they would be interested in contributing some money, but then it's a public field, and if these guys if they're able to raise $100,000, what kind of stake does that get? You know, so that.
Oh, I'll take that one.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Well, but just with a reminder that actually the board has a gift policy on its radar, so that's really one of the next things that the policy committee needs to take up, as it related to some of the conversations that you had last spring in terms of a group that wanted to donate. So whether it is an in-kind or whether it is donations, here's $25,000, whether it's here's $2 million, whether it's the benefactor in Cornwall who would very much like to fix the roof, whatever it is, right? We need to really address that conversation, because we can do anything. We are actually in a very nice position right now that we can accept gifts, and that does not count against our spending threshold. So that's some little glimmer of good news. However, you don't have a gift policy, and I think really that's what's at the heart of your question. So if I missed anything, Matt, please fill it in.
The only question I had to bounce off to Sean was, what percentage of total use time would you say would be consumed by the high school versus non-ACSD leagues and teams? What would be that?
So like
that ratio?
outside groups,
everything ACSD and everything non-ACSD. What would the split be?
Well, ACSD would probably be 80%, 90%.
So 80-20 would be a ratio that we could think about.
Yeah, and it's, again, we are solicited every once in a while from outside groups, whether it be a soccer league or.
But outside leagues have the ability to charge dues to their teams. I'm thinking of the ice time model, obviously, ice time, field time, but so you have that model there, and that might be able to get you 20%. You might get another 20% in savings versus the grass cost that you replaced. Right, and that was another piece that we were throwing around. It's probably not more than 20%, but now you're at 40% of your revenue for the year that comes in the savings from grass and potential revenue from outside sources. What does that do to the total debt service payment over the course of, so that's kind of the.
And just Mary had there, we absolutely will go out and try and have big fundraising. We just haven't done. We have not committed to that yet because I think there's so many unknowns, and I think there are at least several people that would be willing to help support it. I think there's a lot of unknowns, and so to say that yes, we're going to yes, X number of dollars are going to be fundraised by local, I think that's really hard to say. I think if the consideration was we will do the field, but X number needs to be raised, then that's something that then we can go and have a target to put against. Like you said, I've been in the community since 2004, and I think I've been working on this since probably about then. So I think I think now for me, having seen this progression of this conversation, despite all the other budgetary issues they're going through, there's a lot of support because I think there are groups of parents who see the value in it across a variety of different, not just sports, but PE and other outside field. And frankly, I think I would say the timing is probably better because the opportunity to do something lower cost to provide more facilities and access to facilities might be a good feather in the cap for the broader conversation about what's going on in the district. But I just say from our perspective, we'll fundraise the heck out of it. But I just don't know that's not something we've been able to commit.
And there are models. Rutland was privately funded, CDU is being privately funded. It tends to be one big donor, but we probably wouldn't get that, but we could look at fundraising more broadly.
And a big part of that is also gifts in kind. Because again, the biggest expense really is the infrastructure, the stone, the drainage, the concrete. All of that is where the big price tag is. So if we have community members that have already been extremely generous to our school and have a history of wanting to support us, that we look to that. And that's part of the, if we do the study and we can say, okay, well, the cost for the subgrade and all that is this dollar amount, then we can go to our companies and say, are you willing to give us a cost or whatever it may be, a bit of a gift. And so that then just keeps knocking the price tag down. We have several excavating companies that are associated with us, that we could they'd be more glad to support what we're trying to do.
And
I can't guarantee that.
Sorry, just to follow up. I mean, that's the kind of information that I think, to me, makes the concept more palatable and more possible than just, okay, we'll give you the okay to do the feasibility study, and now we have a price tag, and now we have to take it to the voters who are going to look at all the other things on our list and go, are you crazy? But, if we've got something that's a little more, refined and designed with some cooperative possibilities, then it seems more then I could say, yeah, let's do it, let's take a look, let's see if we can make it happen. But
Steve Cash, and then I had a question.
Question, a few comments. Can anyone tell me, in say the past 2 years, how many sporting events have been canceled or rescheduled? Could you throw a number at it? I mean, it's in jest, but I think it would be good to know. And then just if we could quickly kind of math off of that, the parent schedules that were impacted, that people then had to rejigger their schedules to make things work. So if anybody has
Officials.
no worries about that. So if you could throw like even a roundabout number, I know
Sure.
it's putting you on the spot.
I'll just give you a snapshot of a season we had where we had one practice on our field down there because of the way the conditions were. One practice the entire season. Between the boys and the girls lacrosse, we played 5 home games out of the 14 we should have played. So everything else was at Middlebury College, or Mount Avis hosted us for girls lacrosse for the last 2 years. I played at least 2 games up there. So that's them being kind to us and giving us a place. They live on a gravel pit, so they don't worry about their wet fields. I was stunned. I'm in 8 inches of water. I go up there and there's a beautiful green field, and I'm like, how is that possible?
Because they have the gravel pit right
15
behind
miles
them.
away, 15 minutes away. So I would say, that was an extreme season. On an average, I would say that we are rescheduling not only games, but also practices. Easily a dozen to 2 dozen in the spring between practices and games, and flip-flopping. We can't play our home game, now we have to make it an away game, and then that affects the busing company because they didn't think they were going to have to do a trip, then we're finagling to do that. And then sometimes to make those work, they're getting a bus company that's not Betcha to come pick us up, and then a Betcha bus is going to get us from the game, and that's all part of the reschedule nightmare. And the spring is by far the worst as far as rescheduling.
All right, I definitely appreciate that, and I think it's important for everybody to understand that cancellations and reschedulings definitely have impacts beyond just student athletes. It goes all the way to parents and who can pick them up, who can't. As we're talking about this, I do hope board members think about flooding, those impacts, but even heavier rainfalls, the increased frequency of, say, a 2-inch rainfall nowadays, they are becoming more frequently. And then on the flip side of it that we all saw last year was the drought, and the impact to that on your fields in terms of grass is certainly going to be significant and be challenging. The last piece that I will put in is that I do know there is at least one school that had a playing field that has really well-drained soils. As a board, we won't have students at that school next year. And so I encourage us all, when we have these conversations, to think of the spaces that we have as assets and to recognize that, like, just looking at the physical plan or just looking at the students or just looking at the test scores, there could be some other value to the district for that particular place, and to think broadly. Because I know of some fields in this district that you could put 2 inches of rain on and you could go play lacrosse on it. In fact, the lacrosse team would come up there and practice every so often because it wasn't.
We use that Ripton a lot.
Yeah. So, all right, thank you.
Jamie, and then I'll go.
Yeah, sorry to chime in again from online. I can't figure out if, is there, I understand about the flooding and the rescheduling of games, and is it the case that you guys are trying to fix the fields, and that the turf field is one option? Like, are there other, perhaps more costs, I'll just say cheaper ways to go about doing that? It's just the issue everyone's raising here obviously is about finances, and you guys are well aware of the binds that the district is in and everywhere across the state too. So is there an alternative to improving the fields that's not this, or is the turf field the main target of your guys' is interest?
Yeah, I think that we have fields that need to be maintained and with serious maintenance, which would take them offline for a while. But the turf field to me is more about accessibility for all of our programs. We have grass fields, but they all live in a floodplain. So if, like I said, we fixed Jetty Field which is our field hockey game field. But the day we hydroseeded it, we got a downpour and it flooded. So and then and every year there's more water on it. So by having a turf field that we could put teams on, knowing no matter what the weather was, or if we got rain in the morning. So if we get heavy rain in the morning, we're done. We're not down on our fields, and we really have no place to go. So we end up canceling a lot of games. And the other teams that suffer are the JV teams, because if it comes down to getting a turf field, we're only getting one team on it. We're not getting both. Sometimes even rescheduling games, the JV aren't getting their games because we have to go after the college. So therefore, we don't have enough daylight until they put lights on Alumni Field for us to be able to play. So it's not one or the other. It's really wanting to have both, but understanding that the biggest part of the turf field is providing greater access, equal access, and giving all of our students the opportunity to be kind of in the environment that Doc Collins Field gives them.
And Sean, are you talking about Friday night access?
Yeah.
So we can expect women's soccer on the field on a Friday night instead of a football game? Is that what you're proposing?
Yeah, I mean, there's only 4 football games at home, so there's a lot of Friday nights left.
It's more than just a field, right? Yeah. It's when you have access, then it's around prioritization. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity to speak to that.
Well, that brings. So may I piggyback on that?
By all means,
because that is one thing where. In the proposal it says eliminates gender-based scheduling disadvantages. I'd probably take that, bring that another question. Sports-based disadvantages. Which sports get prioritized to use the field first? If soccer has to play a game at home and football has to play a game at home, and someone else needs to play a game at home, who's going to get that first field? Or are we going to toss it into a bucket and throw it out and figure it out from there? Yeah. But the other thing that, the dollar figures and knowing how close we are in our current year budget to the cliff, the financial cliff, which, means double taxation on every dollar you go over, is a scary thought. And we've always tried to stay below that. So for me, looking at the dollars and knowing that this doesn't incorporate all students that participate in sports for Middlebury teams, to say that yes, the track kids can go over and use the college facilities, it still doesn't feel like this is a proposal for everyone from me. What my kids have done here. Both did soccer, one did lacrosse, one trucked across the river to do pole vaulting and hurdles. So I've had to split my time between different fields. So that's where I'm coming from is if we're doing something, it would be really nice if we could look at it all the sports perspectives. Yeah. But the other thing is we've talked about going for a bond to just work on our buildings, and we're like, we can't really do that. So I think you've heard from a lot of the board, and I think the board should have a time to mull it, think about it, not the mull, and think about it, and we'll make sure that it's on the agenda again for another conversation and a vote. But I think there's some pieces that we just can't undo because of what Montpelier is doing to us. So, but yeah, I mean, I've been in these conversations. I mean, I've seen the original plans, and I said, so how much different is this than the original plan? So I appreciate the time, but to Mary Heather's point, I do think that even if just a survey was put out there about who might be able to help with the costs on the other end, that would be really crucial to the board in making their decision, I would think. So I don't think it's a no tonight. I think it's could we have some more information? And we'll continue talking. Fair?
Yes.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all the info you brought.
Where are we now? Oh, Negotiations Committee. That's Steve Orsick.
I'm pleased to announce that we have a tentative agreement with the ESPs, and that's been signed. It's got to go for ratification to the association first, and then it will be presented in its full form. So, if you have any questions about that, yes, ma'am.
What's the duration of this agreement?
2 years.
2 years.
At the association's request.
Yep.
And although I can't give you an exact percentage, it's about 5.5%, which is tracks with what other settlements have been around the state. And we got rid of the language that said that we would treat pregnancy like any other illness. We got that out of the contract.
Yes. We did have some.
We should like the percentage.
Not until it's signed.
Yeah. Like I said, we're just
Yeah.
until we get an actual ratified.
Yeah. So
I think we
and
can leave it there
so that would come back to the board to ratify once
For approval.
for approval.
For
yes.
approval. So, are there any other questions to Steve before we go on to? Are there any other committees that absolutely need a update in lieu of the time? Online, anybody? Nope. Okay. So I guess we'll move to it's our second public comment period, and the rules of the first one still maintain. Abby.
I know you guys love me. So I have a couple. There's statements, but mull it over. I've spoken with a couple of people about the whole chair thing. Parents and people from Ripton are going to Salisbury. Why can't Ripton residents apply for that Salisbury chair? And I feel the same way as a Shoreham resident. Why can't I apply for a Bridport chair? I don't want your chair right now, but I have too much on my plate already. But I just feel that needs to be looked at. We are all one now. My kids are going there. I should have a voice there. And anyone within Shoreham community should have a voice there. And again, Ripton with Salisbury. So that's one thing. Education, the behavior stuff, has that stuff been put side by side? Because I think you'll see a lack of education and a lack of attendance when education is also slacked. Or more behaviors when less education. I think those two things need to be looked at together. And then attendance. I would be curious what attendance for Ripton children are at the Salisbury school, and if that's a decline from previous years, because as a parent who will be driving her children to Bridport, let me tell you, there are days I probably wouldn't be driving them based on the snowy roads we have, even though school's open. And so my kids probably will have a decline in attendance because of that. So I also wanted to let everybody know that. And I guess that was kind of, those are my thoughts for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody online? No? Okay. All right. Board reflections? Well, Trish, I think that says all.
Plus, this is going to be a short meeting.
Well, it's okay. I mean, if we covered quite a bit, and if people aren't feeling up to doing a reflection, that's fine. Steve?
I just really wanted to appreciate Dr. Afeline's presentation tonight, and that in spite of everything going on in the education world right now, that we're attempting to just move the ball down the court per se and keep, just moving forward. Not that we have it all figured out at all, but I can appreciate small steps.
Great, thank you. All right. Are we still doing the executive session?
We are.
Okay, so then I need a motion from someone.
I move to find that the disclosure of cybersecurity or emergency response measures could jeopardize public safety.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And then may I have one more motion to go into executive session and who you wish to invite into that executive session?
Don't we have to?
We need to.
Oh, sorry.
vote on this one first.
Is there any discussion on the motion to move into
To find.
On the finding.
on the findings per VSA 313A10, security, cybersecurity, or emergency response measures? Any discussion on that? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next motion, into executive session, and who you wish to invite.
I'd like for you to invite me and Nellie and Matt, if that's something you would be willing to consider.
I will move that we go into executive session to discuss security, cybersecurity, and emergency response measures per 1 BSA 313A10, and we would like to invite Dr. Baker, Dr. Colasso, and Matt Carenti to join.
Is there a second to that motion? Who said second? Laura said second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll all proceed to vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?